I'm grateful for the next two guests because the whole thing about linkages and lasses is that, again, sometimes we have these conversations and it feels like an echo chamber. So it's very important to us to bring people that are doing very important work out in the community that is not centered around HIV. However, that can be more inclusive of those of us that are living with HIV. When we started talking about why this program was important, and what organizations to really look for when it came to having them participate in this. The next two organizations are very near and dear to my heart because as as a first generation immigrant who did become HIV positive at 23, I know that there was really little chance that my mom and dad or that my family were going to receive any kind of like HIV education or introduction to HIV by the organizations that are HIV specific. They just didn't see that as a need. So the fact that we can have the next two guests here, it really warms my heart. I'm gonna introduce them now. The first one is Victoria Alarcon. Hi, Victoria.
Hello.
And Victoria works for Hope Community Center. And if you're not familiar with the work that Hope Community Center is doing, I strongly suggest that you become acquainted and quickly because when I got to do the training for linkages and lasses, their team was this group of Latinx individuals, all of them just with a passion for change. And the way that y'all received me and received the training around why it was important to include people living with HIV, it warmed my heart because it was like, here's leaders that are already doing this work in my community, and they're willing to add the message of HIV education, be more inclusive of people living with HIV, and really just thank you for participating in this.
I mean, thank you so much. We really appreciated you and your presentation. We learned so much, and we're just really grateful to be a part of this project.
Thank you, Victoria. And our next guest works for an up-and-coming institution. They were recently voted. I'm gonna butcher this because I heard it as like, new kids on the block, and I think Natalia will be able to clarify that for us. But Natalia Soler works for Poder Latinx, which is a civic engagement institution. Again, working to ensure that those of us in the Latinx community are able to really not take advantage, but really come into what it means to have civic power in this country. So, Natalia.
Yeah, hi Andres. Hi Victoria. Thank you so much for having me here. This is a special moment for me, and you reaching out to help and have the conversation. I really appreciate it. And yeah, actually, Bullet Latinx is we're close to 2 years now, and we're one of the up and coming, as you said, Latinx organizations. So it's pretty exciting.
And thank you both. I appreciate the fact that both of you were key in making sure that your institutions took part in the Linkages and Lasses program. And why don't we start with my first question is, what is something like a key takeaway that you personally took from the training?
I can go ahead and start. So when you told me about the training, I was very excited. I'm always very excited to get involved and learn a little bit more about the things that I don't have more knowledge on. So I pulled my digital organizer. I told her, "Hey, come with me, join this training," and we were talking about it after you finished the 2-hour presentation, and it was something that's very necessary, especially within the Latinx organization. There's the lack of access to specific materials, even in like the language that really folks need to really be able to learn what's happening, or where they can go to, have healthcare or something specifically that's catered to the issue. But just the increasing knowledge of HIV, and then creating an inclusive workplace, where even the coalitions that we build up, that's a conversation that still needs to be had at the table. So That's something that even like just scenarios, education from the timeline, back in 1981, or like the Ryan White situation, the scenario that took the subject and brought it to different audiences, right? So like just that type of education and knowledge that is going to be helpful for me to go ahead and have a conversation with somebody in my organization, and if something were to come up, I'd be like, no, this is not okay to say, or having the proper language to talk about the issue.
Victoria?
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of what Natalia said. I think what was really important in learning, right? Like this is not, talking about HIV and AIDS at Hope, it's not something that we've done a lot. And so something that, this training, it really opened my eyes to where we are as an organization, right? And it wasn't all of our staff on the training, but, I think getting an idea of where all of us were individually, what knowledge we were coming in with, really helped illuminate all that we need to talk about, all that we need to cover, right? All that we have to learn. And we did a lot. We learned so much during the training. I think definitely talking about the way stigma shows up in our community, right? The fear around even talking about it because we don't know how to talk about HIV and AIDS in our community. And I think also like language, right? Like beyond just, the words in English, right? In Spanish, that was one of the main things that I remember from your presentation was like, there's a lot of misinformation and like folks aren't using the right language in Spanish. And so us understanding that, like, here's how you say this thing, here's how you speak about HIV and AIDS in English, but also, and respectfully, right? And here's how you do it in Spanish. I think that was really important for us to know how to move forward, with these conversations, not just in our staff, but with our community. So that was, I think the piece about language and all that it encompasses was really important for us.
And I know that oftentimes we say the whole HIV and AIDS disproportionately affects these communities. And one of the things that we really wanted to do with Linkages and Lasses was provide the visualization to what that actually means, So I'm going to share with our audience one of the statistics that I actually gave to you during the training. And it shows you what the HIV incidence, which does new infections here in Central Florida, is like. And if you look at our population, Hispanics, we make up 27% of the population, but we're at 37% of all new HIV infections in Central Florida. And when you look at the Black community, they make up 15% of the overall population, but they're at 36% of new HIV infections. So I was personally grateful for the fact that you did take the time to really learn that piece, because I can scream all day about HIV prevention, but I know for a fact that the audiences that you have access to are, wildly different than the ones that I do with my platform. So that was a big piece. And let's talk about some of the goals, because that's a big part of the program too. Is we like to make sure that every organization feels supported in creating their own goal to take into the future. So if one of you feels free to start sharing about one of the goals that you made during the training and what kind of progress you're making on that.
So we actually so we're building a coalition, and one of the campaigns that we're working on, which is the Paid Family Leave campaign. And with that, we're trying to construct a plan to do outreach for folks impacted with HIV to be included in the Paid Leave for All campaign. Invite them to be decision makers, because this is something that impacts them a lot. Not being able to go to work because you have to take care of somebody that's sick, or you yourself not feeling well and can't afford to miss work because you need the money. That's a big issue that's happening in this country, and we're trying to build from that campaign and have more of that conversation and involve more folks into that campaign. So we've been trying to do just month-to-month outreach on trying to talk to other organizations, specifically like Latinx organizations, having a conversation in Spanish, because I think that that's also a big lack, even in the workplace. Providing materials for LGBTQ folks, specifically people of color as well, who are really impacted by HIV, and just trying to either do the training that you provided for us and like figure out a way to facilitate that to other folks as well, and maybe incorporate that in a like 3 to 6 month basis. So just kind of keep the conversation going, have it there, so in case people have any questions or something, we'll be able to pull back from that and be like, okay, here's the information that they provided for us. If you have any questions or need any, or anything that that lacks the education, here's the materials that we have to share that for you. So
Thank you, Natalia. And Victoria?
Yeah, so I think the main goals that we set for ourselves during the training was starting these conversations with our programs, right, with our community. And so what we want to do is really, we have a lot of different programs, with folks ranging from, mothers, right, immigrant mothers. We have our like several youth groups, right, and we want to have these conversations, like starting off with just the presentation, right. I think something that we really came to understand through the workshop with you, Andres, was like, we don't talk about this at all because there's this fear of, one, we don't know how to talk about it, right? And so how are you going to start a conversation about something you don't know? There's all of this stigma, right? So even if you're struggling or you have questions, it's really hard to bring up. You never know who to bring it up to, right? And so we think that by going into our programs and doing this presentation, right, and starting the conversations ourselves, right, we give folks that sense of like, okay, if I have questions, I can go to the leaders at our organization, right? I can go to these folks. I think one of the great things about Hope Community Center is like we've been in this community for so long. Folks trust us, right? And they trust our leadership. So really, by starting this conversation, right, letting folks know like we can talk about this. Here's how to talk about it, right? If you have more questions, if you need resources, we can connect you. I think that's really been our biggest, that's like our first big step that we want to take with, moving forward.
And I appreciate that about you both, and really about every organization that participated in this program, because all of them made like not just commitment, but like realistic and achievable commitments. In fact, I know that for our World AIDS Day event, Natalia and Poder Latinx provided their own video just doing outreach to our community when it came to their paid leave for all campaign. And when it comes to Hope, I gotta say, I'm gonna share something that is still in the works with you, but as you know, part of going through the Linkages and Lasses program is that you do gain access to our web resource. And when we did our web resource, we wanted to make sure that we had content that was helpful and specific for the individuals that went through our training. And since one of the biggest things that came up for the Latinx community was the idea that, how do we engage our families? How do we talk about these things? And I'm going to try to pull it up, but basically what happened is that after we had that conversation, since my grandmother and my aunt and my cousin Daniela are all visiting from Colombia, I actually had 3 generations of Latinx women sit around and talk about HIV. And let me tell you, it's completely different when you're doing it with like a community member and you're like, HIV, like having to stop my grandmother at one point and be like, no, we don't, no hablamos así de las personas porque los hace sentir mal. And then having her be like, oh yeah, like, I guess I shouldn't call it up. Like, I shouldn't say this or that because it's stigmatizing. Like, it was a huge moment and it was very cathartic. And I got to thank you both and every other participant that gave us that free and open sharing of their experience with their families, because you were both really good about that piece. So, I'm excited that it'll be going live on our web resource, and I'm excited to share that with you both when it does go live. My next and really final question, because I don't have you for that much longer, is what would you say to any organization that is considering taking this linkages and lasses training? You know?
I would probably, encourage them, tell them that, especially working in organizing or being, in the social movement, and being progressive, there's all of this stuff that a lot of folks, you know, are involved in. This is a big part of getting to know your community and getting them involved in whatever the work that you're doing. Just because people have some sort of, people have and something that impacts their life that they can't help, like they should still be able to be there when it comes to whatever decision they're making. And this training really, sometimes folks might think like they know everything or they might like know enough, but you really can't know enough. It's always good to learn more. So when it comes to HIV and the stigmatization of HIV, there's always something new that's coming out every day. There's always updates, and things that can be improved and whatnot. So I think just taking the training, really getting to understand it, really getting to look into your life and like what you're doing to be involved and help other folks as well that are living with HIV, and that by itself is a way to stop the stigma. Just like learning about it, if you're able to have a conversation about it, like as you said you were having with your family, like it's just small little things like that that really make a difference. So and having this amazing team like yours that does the training, that also helps a lot. So yeah.
Thank you, Latanya. And Victoria?
I would say, yeah, one of the biggest takeaways was we all have a role to play, right, in ending this epidemic, right? So I think no matter what kind of work you're doing, you can help. There's always, like Natalia said, there's always so much to learn. I think, all of us, that, from my team that participated, we all took away so much. We learned so much about language, about, even just having conversations, about stigma, about, HIV and AIDS in general, right? There's so much that we learned. And, this doesn't affect one community, it affects a lot of folks. And, so no matter who you're working with, you've got a role to play. And, we're just really excited to be a part of this now.
And, I'm very excited to have you. I really do, because a lot of when we do our work consistently, it's easy to fall into like the pattern of this is the way we've done it for so long, and I definitely see that in our HIV field. We're used to being like, how are we going to do outreach? So it's like, we're going to throw condoms at people and see which one sticks. And there has been innovation and there has been a lot of progress. But I think that the next step, and we see it in the work that Sam and those that came before us were doing before, where it was like, how do we bring everybody into the fold? This is the next step in making sure that our community addresses HIV, making sure that it's not just the same players around the table, but new ones that might say like, hey, have you considered doing this? And we can be like, oh, no, we did not. So I did promise a sneak peek, if you will. So I'm going to share with you just like a snippet of what is coming up on our website. And the conversation actually goes a lot deeper than this, but this was just like the final.
¿Al mismo tiempo?
Sí, trate.
Pues tú dices 3.
3.
Es importante hablar en familia y educarse uno al otro. ¿Sí? Ustedes son pilas para esto. ¿Cómo era? Es importante que hablar en familia y educarse el uno al otro, dijeron ustedes. Ah, bueno. ¿Sí?
Sí.
No, hagamos una cosa.
So that was just like the fun little outtake from it. But what it really showed me is the work that we do here as Latinx individuals in the United States, it does actually translate to our home countries. because I know that by being more active in my community here, that has slowly like trickled down to my cousins in Colombia, and I see how they're becoming activated as well. And that's just another piece that really excites me about the work that we're doing here in our community, especially with Maven, especially with Hope, with Poder Latinx, because when we activate, we're slowly supporting and also elevating other movements around the world. So I want to thank you both so much for being here today. Is there anything you want to leave us with, or anything you want to say about either your program or the organizations that you're working for right now?
I just want to thank you, Andres, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity and you reaching out. And like I said, just the conversation of it. And I'm excited for the new year. I wish everybody happy holidays and the work that we're going to do for 2021. So
Thank you, Natalia.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Andres, so much for this opportunity, for inviting us, right? And for, including new voices in this conversation. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Victoria.